Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining our weekly podcast. I'm Robin Lewis, founder and CEO of the Robin Report, which, by the way, I say this every week, we are much more than just a daily report. We really believe that we are a knowledge platform from which we communicate thought leadership on various strategic topics through our reports, yes, our daily reports, but also these podcasts and also webinars. And eventually, when COVID gets out of here for good, we'll go back to live events. So along with our chief strategist, Shelley Kohan, who, by the way, is also a professor at FIT and Syracuse University, we welcome you to our conversation on the topic of Retailtopia vision and how technology can help shape the future of retail, one consumer at a time. And we're fortunate and honored, really, to have arguably one of the best experts in data analytics, who I've known for some time. And he leads a new business division for data and analytics giant Verisk, and the new division is called Commerce Signals, and Andy Mantis is its president. So, Andy, first of all, thanks so much for joining our podcast. And I stole your statement for our topic, Retailtopia, but I also added one consumer at a time. The reason I did that is because what you have pioneered, first at MasterCard, then NPD, and now for Verisk, in my opinion, is an astounding and I think really profound use of data. And get this, audience, to drill down into the consumer's wallet to determine what they are spending it on, where they are spending it. And by the way, that could even be competitors of yours, so you know what share of your wallet they're stealing from you. Also, when they're spending it, and on, much more. And we're gonna get into that in a few minutes. But first, Andy, please fill in the blanks of what I missed in my description of Commerce Signals and how it works. You know, where you get the data, how you use it, and then. Since we're through the holidays at this point, maybe you can give us an overview of consumer spending during the holidays and also how it's kind of kicking off this year.
Thanks, Robin and Shelley. It's great to be here. And Robin, you're always welcome to borrow old phrases and make them better anytime. So Commerce Signals, our data foundation is in card data. We have anonymized and permissioned card data that represents over 40 million households gathered in partnership with different types of financial institutions ranging from banks to processors. And we take that data and we work in conjunction with some third parties to organize that data into wallet and household views. You think about it, people have multiple credit cards. Well, we tie all those cards to one wallet, then into a household. And from there, we then append literally hundreds of different geo and demo attributes to create a very rich data set. So that's the foundation. And from there, we try and create value. We do this in a few ways. You know, Robin, as you alluded to, we do insights. We have, very precise and deep competitive insights that enable retailers to spot issues and take action. We then have a suite of marketing effectiveness products. We take that data and we model it for digital audiences to help campaigns effectiveness. We have campaign measurement offerings. So if you're running a campaign, you can actually see the results based on how the people exposed to that campaign actually spent. And we also then take models and we will append CRM databases with various propensity models and on from there. So multiple ways from that core foundation to help our customer base succeed. Then flipping to the holidays, although it's only February, it feels a little while ago, but I will tell you, it was a pretty good holiday season. Overall, we saw on card spending was up 22% year over year. And you think, Omicron came in December, there were supply chain concerns. But if, you look at the big picture, you start with a couple of big drivers, which make a lot of sense. Travel up 139% year over year.
Wow.
Restaurant spend up over 50% year over year. Right? A lot of pent up demand. It shifted into retail, but that was growing as well. You have retail up over 10% year over year. But what's also interesting, during COVID, e-com accelerated, exponentially, but during the holidays, in-store growth outpaced e-commerce growth. In-store was up 15% year over year. E-com was up 4%. I guess people did want to get out, right?
Yeah.
And the store, does still have a place. When you drill down a little further in the types of retailers, clothing stores saw the largest year over year gain at 29%. I don't know about you guys, but I assume there were many like me who wanted to get out of the sweatpants. Right. But clothing absolutely, saw really good growth. And then you take, just as a retailer, a great example, Target just killed it, right? They had that wonderful blend of in-store, online, omni-channel, with, frankly, some good inventory practices and pricing practices. And their year over year growth during the holidays outpaced Amazon. You just don't see that every year. So
Target has really nailed it. Unbelievable across the boards. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the good news is that we're off to a good start this year as well. January, we actually saw an acceleration in retail spend of 13% year over year, and just overall card spend, again, still with travel behind it, up 24% over January of last year. So we're off to a good start.
Yeah, Andy, it was great to see some of those apparel numbers come back. They really took a hit, apparel, accessories, and shoes during the pandemic. And it's so great to see such positive numbers there. But let's kind of take a step back if we can. And understand how we kind of got to commerce signals. So due to evolving privacy concerns over the past few years, getting retailers' first-party data has been more and more difficult for advertisers. And then, of course, sharing data between advertisers and retailers is also getting more difficult, as well as sharing data between the retailer and the brands. So just to kind of quickly explain to our listeners, first-party data is owned by the retailer. So, for example, Foot Locker collects data from its customer. Then you have second-party data, which is owned by partners of the retailer. So Nike shares data with Foot Locker as an example. And then you have third-party data, which is Foot Locker goes out and purchases data for a particular segment. So consumer data over the past few years has been harder and harder to get. Now we fast forward into 2022, and it's really great to see a retailer's ability to further a deeper understanding on consumer behavior specific to the markets and be able to improve the level of detail and data collected through, for example, media networks, retail media networks. So it went from like doom and gloom, no data, to happy days are here again, lots of data to share. So Andy, I am personally very fascinated by what you guys are able to do, and literally getting into the consumer's wallet with tons of credit and debit spend data across 40 million homes. And so can you just dig a little deeper and tell us all the ways that retailers and brands can actually use this data? And I assume you would also advise big box major retailer and brands maybe differently than smaller brands or smaller retail stores. Is there kind of like a fixed template that can work for all, big and small? And lastly, do you do the analytics for them like a consultant? You mentioned that earlier. How do you work with the teams?
Sure. Okay, we'll unpack that. It's a bunch of stuff. And so overall, we do see, retailers, the marketing teams, as well as their ad agencies shifting to purchase data everywhere they can, since it really is the ultimate indicator of consumer preference, right? The data landscape is clearly evolutionary. And, Shelley, to your point, the data you may have used 2 years ago may not be the data you're going to use a year from now. An example of that is, not long ago, location data, or the data that's pulled off of apps, was really the default for most retailers' digital marketing campaigns and often for campaign measurement. But Apple made some iOS changes. Google has announced in the not too distant future they're making changes. That data is becoming harder and harder to collect, which is also fueling more of the adoption of purchase data. So I also would point out that you can use data alone, but also in combination, it's sometimes more powerful. So for example, one way a retailer can work with us is literally in a privacy-friendly way, joining their CRM data to our file, and then we will add models. So they have all the benefit of their first-party data, everything they know about the customer. We have that holistic view of everything they're doing outside the retailer, and modeling that combination with precision can really help help everything from engagement strategies to creating better personas. Are they health food fanatics? Let alone are they big spenders in the category and small spenders with you, even if you might think they're a good customer, right? So that's a very powerful way we are working with retailers. Couple of others. I didn't mention it before, but given the scale of our data, we're actually able to see spend down to a store level for most retailers and see the on and offline spend. So we do provide, and we take our data and we scale the sales up to represent all spend in the US. So we're literally able to help them benchmark the competitive spending by store, by zip code, by on and offline channel. And you think about it, especially over the last couple of years, what happens in regions is very different, right? COVID has affected regions in different ways. Stores have opened and closed in different cadences. And we've been working with quite a few retailers on geographic level insights, not just insights, which has been very important. And then marketing services. In here, we're generally working not just with the retailer, but also their agencies, their ad agency. And I definitely think that the retailer shouldn't be completely offloading everything to their agency. They need to still have a strong voice. It sometimes happens, not all the time. Later on, I can give you an example of that. But we do create, we have digital audiences. We have, literally you go to a marketplace like LiveRamp, we have over 400 off-the-shelf audiences, or we can create a custom audience. An example would be, hey, we want to target people who are back in the market to buy clothing because they hadn't for the last 2 years, right? We can create that kind of audience. And we do a lot of work in campaign measurement as well. Those are the primary ways that we're working. And the business model is very flexible, right? Different retailers are at different stages in their resourcing, their sophistication. So, depending on that, we can either run the analytics or provide the other end of the spectrum data files. But no matter what, it's our role to ensure that we're coaching our customers on the details of the use of purchase data. All data sets are different, and no matter how self-sufficient they are, we need to ensure they're leveraging best practices, clearly. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it out, because we're talking about a pretty broad set of applications of data. We actually have no personally identifiable data. We have anonymized IDs, even though there are like over 100 million of them. It's like a lot of it, but it's anonymized. And in working with our customers, we either share back some level of aggregation or a model. The nice thing is we basically have the answer key to the model sitting here, so we understand the precision. But again, we're very privacy forward in our approaches.
Andy, this is really phenomenal what you've created here. And, myself and the Robin Report have been with you since you pioneered this capability. But something interested me throughout this entire tech era that we're living through is that I always wonder why the C-suites, or leaders across the industry don't immediately get it. In other words, and understand the incredible benefits and competitive advantage they can achieve through this kind of a model. But is it like they have to go through a long educational process? Anyway, can you give us a couple of real case studies, without naming names, maybe a big and a small retailer and brand?
Yeah, I can give you a few case studies, Robin. I'll add to that by saying, a lot has happened over the last decade. And, although retailers, are at different stages of adoption and readiness with data, I think the best testament, and this is well known, is like literally the most successful retailers out there. You take your Targets, your Walmarts, your Amazon, they've adopted very data-driven approaches, right? Ranging from providing benchmarking to the C-suite to sophisticated data-driven marketing. And I'd also say that it's not always, getting started is not always equating to a large technical investment, but you do have to invest in the people to be the champions, to be able to translate data into stories, opportunities, and actions. So, technology can be a real barrier sometimes, but really investing in the people is the best way to start. And you can always, follow with the technology. But like I said, really the proof is the most successful retailers of our times have adopted these data-driven approaches. And I'll segue to, I'll give you a few examples that I think are interesting. First, a national retail pharmacy. They're working with one of our partners, Viant, who is a marketing tech and services company. They're working on some campaigns with Viant. In that case, our role was in measuring the results of the campaign. So in using our products, we're able to see how consumers who've been exposed to the ad are or are not changing their spending. And based on what they saw, between different creatives, for example, mid-campaign, while the campaign's in flight, they were actually able to adjust the campaign tactics, doubling down on what was most successful. And as a result, they actually increased buyer penetration by 19% and increased average basket. So, that was like a really good example of, you've got a campaign out there. The data lets you actually see how well your campaign is doing in different treatments and then adjusting. A very different one that I alluded to a little while ago. We're working with a big box retailer, and we were actually helping to guide as an input their store reopening plans after the first big COVID lockdown. So what we did is we created insights at a store level, as well as on and offline, and then we created cohorts of, different tiers of their most loyal customers, middle, low, and then gave them the insight to how those behaviors had changed across the retail landscape and the on and offline buying as the world was locked down. That informed some of their opening strategies, but also they were able to monitor how the different customer segments were engaging and behaving as they opened their stores again. And again, it was an input to those strategies that I think was, just, hey, we wouldn't have imagined that use case for, 3 or 4 years ago, but it was very powerful. And we see more and more retailers, adopting that same GeoDriven Precision. I'll go kind of to something that is sort of maybe a bad example in a good way for data. And I mentioned, the advertiser really needs to engage with the agency. So this is a little outside retail, but I think it's an important example. We're working with a destination marketing organization. Their job is they do a campaign, they want to bring tourists into their state, in this case. We're measuring the campaign, and it's not doing so well. Okay, they're getting upset. Their campaign is, all right, no one likes a campaign that's not doing well. So we started looking at who was exposed to the campaign in our data, and we found that 40% of the people exposed to the campaign already lived in the state. It was a clear example of a very bad use of buying digital audiences. You're talking about big and small retailers. Look, and smallest retailer out there can buy a digital audience, but there's a lot of data. You do have to be invested in understanding who you're working with. There's accountability, in this case, on the DMO as well as their agency, and I'd say the retailer as well. So as a result, then you ask, this is where we've provided some more consultative services back on, look, the kinds of audiences they need to support their campaigns with in the future so they're not wasting that kind of money. But those are just a few of the examples that I thought would be good to share.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I can only imagine the value of this consumer spend behavior after the first COVID lockdown, because it was such a wild and unprecedented and unanticipated demand and shift across many categories. And even coming back today, there's no way you can use last year's data, right? So I remember back in the day, I worked for a couple major retailers. And to date myself in a couple areas, one is inventory. We used to do inventory by hand with, book and pencil and pen and count it all up. But, today we can, with digital IDs, we can actually do a complete inventory in 20 minutes, which is just mind-boggling every week if we want to. So Robin and I just did a podcast on this last week with Avery Dennison called Tech Innovations, Reengineering Inventory and Fulfillment. And then when we used to spy on the competition back in the day, we would physically go to the store and we'd follow the customer around and see where were they spending time, what departments did they go in. And we would even sometimes follow them out of the store to see where they went to next. I know that sounds so crazy, but now Commerce Signals, you're nailing all of this, not only about the competition, but about every single individual and their entire shopping journey through an integration of debit and credit cards, US demographics, other sources, and of course, it's all anonymized. And I mean, it's awesome. We think about technology has done to really completely transform retailing. And the other area that's being completely disrupted is the whole advertising and marketing dynamic. So, when Ralph Lauren and Macy's would run a co-op ad in Vogue, there really be no way to track the purchasing, the impressions, what that ad really did. Yeah, you'd get a bump in sales, and that told us a little bit of the story, but it really wasn't a direct connection to the ad itself. So now, essentially, retailers are building their own digital media outlets and networks in-house. In other words, not going to outsource agencies to advertise, but actually having brands come to them and advertise on their network. I just listened in on Walmart's earnings calls today, and Doug McMillon, he talked about $2 billion of global ad revenue that they are bringing in, selling ad space to their brands. So my question for you is, Andy, does this mean there's an end to co-op advertising? In other words, if Macy's and Ralph Lauren do the co-op ad, is all that going away? Or is it better for Macy's to sell Ralph Lauren digital ad space on one of their many digital assets? So, the retail media networks are when brands place ads on the retailer's own network or channels. So, for example, going back to my Foot Locker example, Nike placing an ad on the Foot Locker website or other, outlets that Foot Locker's using, or Walgreens allowing its brand partners to buy ad space in one of the Walgreens media outlets, right? So then you have Walgreens, Foot Locker, Macy's, they're all getting now the first party data back with the brands.
So the evolution is really interesting. And first I'll say that I have, post-COVID, I have less confidence in my crystal ball than pre-COVID. So I don't know whether certain types of advertising will become extinct, but I can say there's a clear shift into data-driven advertising. It is more efficient. The attribution is more clear in these advertising models, and the money is going there. And I'll also say that the retail media networks have hit the current wave of popularity. They are a way, a retailer can make money, brands can make, right. So it's a little bit self-serving, and sometimes in a good way. I do think that, in my opinion, as they evolve, you can't lose sight of the customer experience and become a ad first website versus a still blending a good experience. But the retail media networks are growing and definitely have a place. I'll add just two more aspects to it. One is they get part of the way there with the data. As you pointed out, first party data can see what's going on within the four walls, but, or the walled garden, as some call it, but it really doesn't give you the holistic view. So, in my opinion, I actually think that, in the future, many of these, RMNs are going to be combining first and third party data for more relevant, targeting. And, frankly, much of what can be achieved with that precision within a walled garden using purchase data like we have at Commerce Signals can achieve much of the same thing, just across ad channels.
It's all fascinating. Andy, it really seems to me that your data's capability to find direct competitors of a given retailer, for example, or brand, it seems to me it could create another synergistic strategy. For example, perhaps both Kohl's and Target viewed Sephora and Ulta as superior competitors in the beauty category. So why not invite them to share their platform? And this platform sharing, as I'm calling it, seems to be accelerating across the industry. And of course, Amazon shop in Kohl's, Apple shops in Best Buy, and there's a bunch of others. And this is happening, it seems, at an accelerated pace. So, Andy, I don't know if they are using your data and actually have a formalized, major strategy, or if it's just ad hoc opportunities. Could you add some color to this?
Well, actually, Rob, it's a great point. And, my sense is today our data is often used, more likely to find affiliate opportunities, but I love the concept of being used more strategically, which to your point could range from what's the best pop-up to put in my store to identifying strategic platform relationships. Kind of interesting also, over the past year, we've formed relationships. More of the large consulting companies are leveraging our data as well. And I think, they often are getting into the mix on these kinds of decisions. So I think it's a great point. And I do think, it is a great opportunity for future use that could be very strategic.
So what are some of the other innovations that you guys are working on? In other words, what's your next step beyond getting your teams out there to essentially educate the industry?
Yeah. And yeah, so we are very focused on getting out there, but I'm very excited about what we have in store this year. There are three areas that I'll call out. One is staying ahead of emerging trends. We've talked about it. It's a very evolutionary world, and we want to enable marketers to use our data wherever and however they would like. So an example of this is that we're doing more and more of is we partnered with ComScore for cookieless versions of our audiences, and in conjunction with their data, we're able to, without cookies, spot where people are most likely to be and when you want to connect with them. So that combination of browsing data plus purchase data to help marketers who want to get ahead of the expected deprecation of cookies in a year or so. Second, continuing to innovate around our offerings. Last year, we ran some pilots where we combined SKU or purchase level data with the card data. And, for example, heavy, chewy dog food buyers who also shop at Walmart a lot, since you brought it up. Yeah, Walmart up, right? That combination is very powerful. And we're doing a lot of product work in that area right now to just add more and more depth to the data. And then third, which I think is really important for the retail community, is putting more power into the hands of the retail CMO and their teams. Today, they're often managing with simple metrics like a campaign lift, but we do have products and continue to evolve products to change that paradigm so you can see, great, my campaign provided lift, but did it change the share of wallet, the lifetime value of the people exposed to that campaign? Did it change my competitive share, right? So arming them with the data to be more strategic around their actions.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, being a fashion professor, I have to come back and ask you this question. You talked about emerging trends and spend. So I know you said you don't have your crystal ball, and that's okay, but can you tell us what emerging trends are going to take place going into 2022?
Good question.
Good question. So I actually think you're going to see a few trends. One, mobile continues, right? Mobile is just going to continue to accelerate. Two, consumption of media and advertising through connected TV as opposed to old-fashioned linear TV is just growing like crazy. That adds a lot of complexity because people are choosing multiple channels now and subscriptions, hey, we've got Netflix, Hulu, Peacock Plus, et cetera, right? So where I'm going is there's a lot of evolution into the way consumers are consuming media, which means you need a lot more precision in where to reach them beyond your own retail media network. I'm also hoping my crystal ball is right in that there's more of it. Look, during COVID, we had that shift to click and collect, buy online. I don't think that's going to change, but I'm really hoping in-store experiences come back in a big way. I just think it would be welcome all around. And supporting that, incredible evolution, data-driven approaches, just become more important as that consumer experience is very, very fluid, right? It used to be predictable and evolutionary, and I've said evolutionary a bunch of times, but I don't think it's that predictable anymore, and you really have to be nimble these days.
Agile, nimble, those words are used more and more often in this very complex era that we are living through and learning through. So Andy, in wrapping this up, first of all, I have to say what an awesome session we've had here. And Commerce Signals tracks every move, where they spend, how much and how often, when and with competitors, right? It also informs on how to market and advertise to kind of close that loop at point of purchase. And finally, I guess some indication of future behavior. And of course, as mentioned, now retailers can match every individual with what they want, where and when they want it, and on and on. So Andy, you were perfect. You were perfect. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Robin and Shelley, thanks for having me. I'll just wrap up by saying, like there's a phrase in hockey, skate to the puck. Our goal is to enable our customers in a very data-driven way with our purchase data, essentially to anticipate that trend, use that data-driven approach, skate to the puck, understand how your actions panned out, and take that closed loop and double down. And if anyone out there is interested in learning more, you can absolutely reach us at commercesignals.com and be thrilled to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, Andy. I love your puck analogy because Robin Lewis taught me that many, many years ago. So I love that analogy. That's a great one. So thank you for being with us. And for our listeners, you can find more of our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Buzzsprout, and therobinreport.com. And please follow us on social media, link in with us, follow us on Twitter to hear the latest thoughts about the industry.
Yeah, I try and remember the famous hockey player that
Gretzky.
That's right. Anyway, I want to thank you again, Andy, and all of our audience for tuning in. And as I do every week we do this, if any of you out there have been thinking about a topic that you want Shelley and I to cover, please email me at robin@therobinreport.com. And thanks to all of you again for joining us.